Hi everybody, welcome back in another video where we're going to be creating this custom swiper. And as you can see, this is our swiper is working pretty much fine. And also we have those arrows like this. And also we're going to be learning how to create those elements. So this is just an example to show you the swiper, how it is working because I see this swiper is working on a lot of e-commerce websites, but also you can use it in a blog or anything that requires this function. Hi, welcome back. So as you can see here in our Visual Studio Code, we have this function. I called it just the swiper. We are returning divs, empty divs, and we are importing the CSS. It's CSS. I called it also swiper. And here, as you can see, we have this empty file, CSS file, so nothing here this moment. So the first step that we are going to do, we're going to create the structure of how it's going to look, our swiper overall with its CSS, and then I'm going to explain what I did. So this is our initial structure of our swiper. So don't worry about how it is looking so far. I know it's looking a little bit weird, but first we're going to explain the structure and how I create the structure of this swiper. So the first thing is the swiper root container, which is the root div that's containing the swiper item container div, which contains all the items where we're going to put in our items to be shown in the swiper. So I'm going to go to our swiper.css, and this is how we made this look like this. So I made it look intentionally like this to explain how it is working. So the swiper root container, I made the width fixed as 900 pixels, so you can play with those widths and heights if you want, depending on your needs and your project. So I made the borders like this just to show you this into the DOM, because in the final result, it's not going to be like this. And I want to show you also something very interesting, like when I make this out of the way, and as you can see, we're showing all the items here. And the reason why normally, because of this property, normally the items will be inside, just only inside the swiper root container, which is the root element, and it's going to be condensed in here. But because we are using this width, max content width property, it's going to be shown also outside the root container div. So that's why we're using this property inside this container, and that's why we're using the overflow X hidden to hidden the elements outside of the root div element. Also here I set the background red just to show you how it looks into the DOM, because this not going to be like this, so I'm going to suppress this. And the display is flexed just to make the items look like this. And also the height is going to be 100% to take the full height, and the max content width as I explained. So the swiper item is this element. So the width is 400 pixel. Also, you can play with this if you want. The background, I just did it intentionally like this. So I'm gonna move this uh, in the video. The margin is 10 pixel to just show the gaps between the items, and you can play with this if you want. And also I added this in case just to eliminate if you want the scroll bar inside the swiper root container. So that's pretty much our initial structure of our swiper, and there are a lot of things that we are going to work on. So next, what I'm going to do, I'm going to like style this a little bit to look a little bit cleaner, and then we are going to be working in the swiping logic. Next, I added this bit of code inside the function. This is what we're going to use to create our swiping logic. But before I start explaining this, I want to mention something very important here that I added just for styling purposes. And as you can see, the red background is not here right now, and I did a bit of radius and edges of each item to make it look a little bit cleaner. And also one thing that I added a little bit of gap here between the items and the root element. And what I did here, I made the height of this container items that contains the whole items here. I made it 96%, and in order to make it centered horizontally, I used the align items property with the display as flex. So that's something that I want to just point out regarding of the styling to make it look a little bit cleaner. And let's go back to our swiper.js function. And I'm going to explain what I did here initially to make the logic happening of the swiper element. So let's start with those variables. Those are only the variables that we are going to use. We're going to use the start x to get the initial position when we click first on the item, and we're using the is mouse down variable state to know whether we clicked on the mouse, and you will know why we did this. And the scroll left variable state, it's going to be used to track the last position when we click on the swiper element. And this swiper ref constant is using the use ref hook, so it can be able to connect to the DOM, to the div, to this swiper items, sorry, the swiper root container item, um, because we're going to use its property. So you will understand why we did this. And here I'm using the event listeners. So those are the event listeners that we're going to use. I'm going to explain each one. The on mouse down event listener is triggered when I click first on the root element. The on mouse move when I'm moving, whether left or right. The on mouse up when I release the button, and the on scroll when I'm moving. So I'm using this. I'm using this twice, but you will know why I'm using the on scroll. So that's pretty much the initial backbone of our logic of the swiper function. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna add a little bit of code, then I will explain. So this is our swiper here in action. It is working pretty much smoothly here and everything's going fine. So because I added some code here and I'm gonna explain each thing to make things functionable. So we're gonna start with the handle on mouse down function. And what we're doing initially, we are assigning the start x variable the initial position when we first click here, where by using the event object and the client x property. And next we are assigning the is mouse down state variable to true. And next we are moving to the handle on mouse move function that it's triggered when I do a move like this, left or right. And the first line here, what we're saying, if the is mouse down is false or this object is null, we are returning nothing, meaning we are exiting the function. And the current property is just the reference of the this div inside the DOM. And the current property giving us access to other properties like the scroll left or the offset width or other elements. For example, if we want to adjust the position of an element. So that's for another video, I think. And what we are doing here in this line is we are preventing any click that can happen if we click on an item, for example. Like let's say, for example, we have a button here and then if I click here to swipe, so in order to avoid clicking accidentally on the button and going elsewhere, we can use this to prevent this. And we are creating this calculation, which means that when I'm moving here, this is gonna get triggered. And here in the delta x variable is the calculation between the initial position and the position when I'm moving the or when I'm swiping. And we're doing this multiplication so we can adjust the speed. And finally, we are using the scroll left property of the actual element inside the DOM. And what we're doing here, we are doing the scroll left, which is this variable minus the delta x. And when or where we are setting the scroll left, we are setting the scroll left inside the handle on mouse scroll. So when I'm scrolling, this is what's get updated. So actually when I click again, I'm going to start from this position and I'm not going to start from the initial position. If I would only use the delta X. And finally, we have the on handle on mouse up when I release the button. So what we are doing here, we're just setting the is mouse down to false. So I hope that you got the idea of how this works. It might seem a little bit complicated at first, but once you get used to it, it's going to seem very, very simple and very straightforward. So once we got this function running, so the next step, what we're going to do, we're going to make this swiper functionable and dynamic with other elements. So what we're going to do here, we're going to create a list, and then we're going to go through this list to be shown here. So that's going to be the next step for this video. So here, as you can see, I created a new items array where we have our items, and those are our items, the name. We use the ID name property, and each item we have those names. And what we're doing next, we are passing in the items array inside the swiper via the items prompt. So I'm going to go back to my swiper.js to explain what I did here. So this is our items prompt, and we're taking this prompt here so we can be able to map through, since it's array, we are going to map through each object to be able to render its name. And we are using the name property to show the name of each element. And this is how it is looking so far. So one thing that I want to do, because I want to take this to the next level, and this is what is used, for example, in the swiper.js library. And most of the libraries that use the swiper function, they're not using the self-closing tag of the component. So we want to use children or children's inside the function. So in order to make it more dynamic and more feasible and also more adaptable for each case that you can face. And this is what I'm going to do. And one thing that came in my mind, I'm going to create first a new component that I'm going to call product form. So I can be able to show it here inside each item, kind of a product card, so to speak. So to be able to make it more adaptable, as I said. So here is our product form. I should say product card anyways. And that's what we are going to use inside this swiper component as a children. But first I want to show you briefly how I did this. So I'm not going to go into that deeply. Here, as you can see, I'm creating the structure of this component. Here it is. There's the body, and also here I'm not using the image. I'm just using icons here to avoid any copywriting issues, and I'm using the font awesome icon library to show those icons. Of course, when we are going to put this as a children into the swiper, we're going to use different icons. And also here, as you can see, we have the styling of this element. So I want to just show you this very quickly and what we created to put inside the swiper function. So next, I'm going to put the product form inside the swiper function, but also I'm going to do some adjustments like adding props here because I'm going to create an array with the name and the price and also the icon that we are going to pass in inside the product form. So we come to the final part of our video, and as you can see, this is our final product. It's working pretty nice right now. And also I added those arrows, as you can see, and it's still working pretty much fine. So I'm gonna show you the things that I added. I'm gonna start from the app.js. So the first thing that I added are the elements inside the products array, and with those properties, as you can see, the name, the price, and the image. So I'm adding those icons like this to act like a image. And here, and this is the interesting part, and this is something that I want to point out because very important. So as you can see, the swiper here, we are using the product form inside the swiper, and it acts like a children. It's like using a lot of children's inside the swiper. So to be able to show those elements are the children's that are put inside the swiper. And we are using the product form component to render each product. And as you can see, this is our products array. And in order to make this working, so I'm going to explain also another important concept here is the children. So as you can see, we're using the children prop here, and we are using it here. And also there is a change here. As we saw, we use just a simple item and to render each item. And we are using the same concept. The difference here, we are using objects, the children objects, which are those objects. So we're using the same concept here, and we are rendering each child inside the swiper item div. So it's pretty simple, and I hope that you understood this concept here. And here we are just passing the product prop for each element so we can be able to show those elements here. And also something important here, you may notice like we use the mark operator here. It's called the chain operator. It means that whether we have an object here or not, it's not going to throw an error and it's not going to break our code, and the program is going to still working. Also, one thing that I want to show here, using those arrows here, and I'm going to show you how I create them here. I'm going to go back to my swiper.js, and I'm going to go here inside the body, and those are the divs for the arrows. So as you can see here, I'm using the icons, arrow left and arrow right, by using the font awesome icon library. And here, what I'm doing here, I'm using this condition show arrows, which is the state variable, because one thing that I added, and it depends on your preference. Like for example, if you don't want to show the error, for example, you can just set that to true, to false, sorry, to false. And we are going to go to our browser, and I'm gonna reload the page. Hopefully that it's going to work. Something went wrong. Sorry, the reason why it wasn't working because the server, the local server wasn't running, so I had to restart it by using the npm start. So here we are back in our project here, and the last thing that I changed is this prop. I set it to false, and as you can see, the arrows aren't showing up, and when I set that to true again, those arrows will show up. So I'm going to load the page again, and here they are. They are showing up like this. And the last thing that I'm going to show you here how I did it. So I used the show arrows variable, and the state is going to be false at the beginning, and I'm using the use effect hook to be able to set them depending whether they are changing or not, and that's the dependency array. And of course, I had to use this show arrows to rely on whether I'm going to show those elements or not. So I want to thank you for watching this video, and I hope you got some value from this, and I hope that you understood how you create a custom swiper without using any library like a swiper JS, for example. I know it's much more advanced than that, and it helps to create a lot of things much simpler and easier, but it's good to know how things are working, because that's gonna help you to advance in your coding career as a developer. So make sure to leave a thumbs up and to hit the notification button so to be notified when I release a video like this. It's all about web development and coding in general. And also make sure to leave a comment down below in the section and give me your suggestions and the things that I need to improve, and probably you saw something that isn't correct, just let me know and I will make the necessary adjustments to improve my work. So thank you again for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.